Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now, this is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndoro. This is what's coming up on the programme. We'll be taking a look at the recently released Audit Bureau of Circulation, ABC figures, Q3, quarter 3, which was announced this past week. And it's not great news, I'm afraid. We'll also be taking a look at the state of media in eSwatini, which is reportedly facing new crackdowns in the form of a spate of defamation actions by the rich and powerful. We find out a little bit more on this story when we touch base with a journalist in the Kingdom of Eswatini during the course of the show. So that's the program, but remember you can also engage with us on social media using the Twitter handle #SABC Media Monitor. And we also share your views on WhatsApp, and the number to use is 065 862 4548. That's 065 862 4548. Okay, so quite a lot to get through, but before we get into those highlighted stories on the program, let's first take a look at what's on the front pages of our Sunday newspapers this morning. And we begin with the Sunday Times. Yeah, this paper is reporting that President Ramaphosa is enraged with the self-proclaimed pastor Shepherd Bushiri managing to flee the country and skip bail. Bushiri is in Malawi as an Interpol red alert has been activated. The leader of the Enlightened Christian Gathering Church, who escaped with his wife Mary, seemed to have left the country round about the same time as Malawi President Lazarus Chakwere's official visit to South Africa. The City Press is leading with the story saying that the ANC Secretary General's court appearance on Friday has plunged the party into crisis, with his supporters fiercely defending him and calling for a review of party leadership. The paper is reporting that party leaders defending Ace Magashule met in Bloemfontein after the court appearance to discuss a defense strategy. The Sunday Independent is leading with the Bushiri Great Escape. Yeah, the prophet and his wife somehow managed to skip the country, breaking their 200,000 Rand bail conditions. But also on the front of the paper is what's being described as a fractious political battle over ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule, who experts say has thrown down the gauntlet with his comments after his court appearance on Friday, suggesting that there's a political conspiracy against him. The Sunday Tribune is reporting that President Ramaphosa is angry and is demanding answers about how controversial self-proclaimed prophet Shepherd Bushiri and his wife were able to flee South Africa to Malawi just a week after being granted bail. It's believed that he may have fled through one of the borders after bribing Home Affairs officials. This after Malawi's President Chakwere's jet was grounded for hours apparently due to a problem with suspicious passengers. The Weekend Argus, like a number of other papers, is also leading with the Bushiri escape. Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwere's plane appears to be linked to Bushiri and his wife finding a way to flee the country. Bushiri's disappearance coincided, as I said, with Malawi President's visit to South Africa. President Chakwere's press secretary said that the president will only discuss the matter once South Africa's government has sent a letter requesting assistance. And the Sunday World headline says that there is a fresh plot to oust President Cyril Ramaphosa. The paper is also reporting a meeting held at a lodge in Bloemfontein to decide how to mobilize a special conference. And the paper is reporting that the RET faction within the ANC is relying on KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga and the Free State, as well as the Northwest, to deliver the majority that's needed to convene a conference. All right, so that's your Sunday newspapers, and we'll be taking a closer look at some of those stories later on with our guest editor. But first, let's take a look at trending topics on social media, particularly Twitter, because after all, many of you, this is your primary source of news. So this is the top 5 a short while ago. And understandably, Bushiri and Malawi would be there because those are the top stories, and the ones in between, they are always there on Sundays, and that relates to a program, The Sacred Space, on Radio Metro every Sunday morning. So Bushiri, the number one trend. Let's take a look and see what people have been saying about this. And the first one is, it looks like a diplomatic storm maybe brewing between South Africa and Malawi after Bushiri absconded this week at the same time as President Chakwera's jet. So that will be interesting to see if those two are related. But I think by far and away, this is really the overwhelming feeling that people have. I've been reading quite a number of tweets about Bushiri. South Africans are extremely disappointed in our state. South Africans have lost confidence in our ability to do anything right. Most believe that we're a banana republic. And this is pretty much the attitude that people have taken. You can buy anything and anyone if in government if you have money. South African government keeps being exposed on how they do things. The same way Bushiri and the Guptas left the country is the same way they're smuggling criminals, weapons, drugs, things, kidnap women and children. And that theme does continue to talk about human trafficking perhaps being an issue. Someone very concerned about that. And Tumisol says that we're laughing at this Bushiri issue, but it's quite sad as it reflects on the status of our system. And this one from Minister of Transport, Fikile Balula, he says, we will find Bushiri. Okay. And Vusi Tembakwaya says, this Bushiri circus is a reflection of a much deeper problem. The failure of state security to keep us safe, the lack of coordination between the police investigating team and border patrol services, and how government officials are constantly caught unaware. It may be that they're very aware, actually, some of these officials, and that they're just perhaps getting given facilitation money to process some of these things. One hears about these stories at the borders all the time. All right, a lot still to come. Stay with us. Right, this past week, the Audit Bureau of Circulation released the latest Q3 figures for the period from July to September 2020. That's the third quarter of this year. And according to reports, the situation has improved substantially compared to the second quarter, when 2/3 of the publications did not submit any data at all. However, despite this improvement, the circulation figures for the quarter are pretty negative across the board. And for more on this story, we're now joined by Makudu Sifara, who's the editor of Times Live and deputy editor of the Sunday Times. Makudu, great to talk to you as always. Thanks so much for joining us. How's the new job going? You have
viewers,
to... there we go. Carry on.
Good morning, Peter, and the viewers. Happy to be here. The new job is going well. I'm only, as you say, new in the position, so I suppose we'll figure it out as we go. So far, it's quite exciting. Thank you.
But you come in at a time where circulation figures are really under pressure. What did you make of the ABC circulation figures? What did they tell you? What trends did you pick up?
No. The numbers we have seen this week clearly tell a story of an industry that's coming out of a very challenging period in the history of newspapers, not just in our country, but globally. You would obviously know that even ahead of the coronavirus pandemic, newspapers were already under pressure, and news managers and editors were looking at innovative ways of sustaining audiences. And Corona didn't help the process. And so for quarter two, you'd recall that the Audit Bureau of Circulation decided that media houses shouldn't be compelled to submit anything because the operating environment was, there was a new normal, to use a popular phrase. And for Q3, what is coming out is that a number of media organizations are starting to submit information. But even for that quarter, a picture that's coming out is not very clear because the industry had not yet fully come out of this new normal. So the key thing, I suppose, is going to be what statistics are coming out of the last quarter of the year. You must remember that quarter 3 is between July and September, and in July, many of the publications, and in fact here in the country, we still had large sections of the economy under lockdown, and so many media owners and publishers felt that it would be a misrepresentation of actual performance to kind of publish as if those numbers fully gave a picture of their title's performance. But what is clear is that most media organizations are, as we speak, engaged in quite a number of efforts to make sure that there's recovery initiatives. They're looking at new ways of getting audiences and revenue, it's a tough battle.
Right.
But if you look elsewhere, say outside our country, I think there was an important report that was published by the New York Times that indicated that for the first time in the history of the publication, their online or digital revenue was more than their print revenue. The publication in the third quarter had received a total of just over 660,000 new subscriptions because of the lockdown. But of course, the New York Times has been on this journey longer than most publications around the world. And so many are looking at it and are saying, so how do we localize this model that they are using? And is our environment, are our economies in the kind of space that the Americans in New York and elsewhere, the American economy is? For us to get those kind of people who are interested not just in the actual paper, given the corona new normal, but in digital only subscriptions. And incidentally, that's part of the responsibility I have in my new job, to look at the Sunday Times digital offerings, look at Times Live and say, how do we grow audiences on that platform? And what are the sort of things that we must introduce? What are the lessons from across the world? And how do we, take that platform and demonstrate leadership in that space?
I can only imagine it's a really difficult space for you because a couple of things. One of them is that the population is much younger than ever before. Some of us grew up, we only knew newspapers, and so part of my life is habit. I will always get the papers. This is just what I do, even though I do have digital subscriptions as well. So that's my age group. But young people, I don't know if my daughter has ever bought a newspaper in her entire life. Everything is on her screen. And then also you've got social media that's putting you under pressure as well, because they're also dealing with news.
Yeah, no, correct. So if we look to innovation as something that must help us get the industry from where it was to where it needs to be, we must accept that if we are going to change things in the news consumption space, there has to be a challenge that propels us in a particular direction. And so many of innovations we see around the world are as a result of people encountering some difficulty of sorts. So the challenge is welcome. So if we accept that young people live online and their consumption is on that space, the question for the South African media then becomes, what is it that they consume there? Is it news as in, the way it's structured in a newspaper, or is it news in a different format? And do we, at this point, need to be looking at how to package content in a way that appeals to them, if that's your target audience? Whatever other many things to do, but you can't assume that the way things have happened in the past is how they should unfold going into the future. What appealed to Peter and Matata Zedu is not really what's going to appeal to Makudu's daughter or Peter's son into the future. So how do the media in the country look at Peter's son as a target and say, we are going to make ourselves relevant to you, and this is what we're going to put on the table. Is it something that appeals to you? And of course, there's a lot of statistics about news consumption patterns and how they are changing, and multimedia, video, the use of actual social media that you refer to. Like, for example, if you look at Times Live, we see there, we of course, look at Chatbit and other things, and we say part of the traffic that we get on Times Live is directed through social media. So how do we put information on social media that allows you to get our information? Do you want long or shorter stories? Do you want stories that are in the form of podcasts, which we have on the website, or do you want videos? So if you look at Friday, there's a huge thing that's happening in Mangaung. Ace Magashule is appearing. Some people would want to read a story about it, but others on social media might want to say, hey, while I lie on my couch, can I listen to an audio that explains what has happened? Or can I sit on a desk and take a break from my books as a student, but watch a video that will take me into the actual court, and then outside of the court, where there's people toying and there's interesting things about people being thrown out of courts and so on and so on. But it's about making sure that you don't just do things because they have been done in the past in that manner. So you've got to reach the people in the way that they want to be reached. But I guess also you have another audience with a digital platform. There are hundreds of thousands of South Africans in the diaspora who are in London, in America, Australia, New Zealand, who probably would want to find out what's going on back home. And you could be writing to them, I guess. For them, Yeah. And it's quite interesting what you can achieve with with technology and online platforms, because once you publish something you are able to see, whether you're using Chatbit or Google Analytics, you are able to see where the people who are reading you are at geographically. So if this is a story that's gaining traction in Gauteng, this tells you, and you're very right. I mean, there's many people who are of here and who are elsewhere around the globe and who are very interested in what is happening here. And that is certainly coming through in the audiences that we are seeing online.
Magudu, looking to the future, do you think that people will still buy newspapers, or you're going to have to give them away, much like they do in Europe now? When you're entering the train station, they literally just throw them at you. Is that going to be the model for print, and that you'll have paywalls on digital, but the actual physical paper, chances are no one's going to buy them anymore? What do you think?
No, I don't think it's going to be a one solution for everything. I mean, there's current affairs in the form of books that many of us still go to exclusive books to get. If you're looking at London, for example, I mean, in 2003 already, there are newspapers there, or is it the Evening Standard or whatever, whose model already was to give newspapers for free. As you get into the tube, there's a bunch of newspapers. They decided that that's how they're going to do it. But I think that each media house is going to have to decide. News or journalism isn't very cheap, especially where you deal with quality journalism. So it might be about how you charge, whether there's a nominal fee, so that the newspaper is not received by people who just wants to throw it away, but that the cover price might have to come down at some point, while you make sure that your online subscriptions go up in the same way that I was saying, the New York Times subscriptions or revenue from their subscriptions and advertising has surpassed that of the printed edition. That is the model of the future, to grow those audiences, while efforts are made to ensure that people like you still continue to get the old and preferred printed paper.
All right. And then perhaps as a final question, bless them, the Audit Bureau of Circulations. I have a feeling that this whole process as well is probably either needs an overhaul or it's quickly becoming outdated, because how do you compare circulation when some papers are being given away and dumped at people's houses and other papers are paid for? How do you compare circulation? Because the people that are doing the advertising will say, yeah, but how many papers do you sell or are out in circulation? And that then becomes difficult to really put a price, because having a paper dumped at my house doesn't mean I'm going to read it.
Yeah, there's quite a number of debates about that, the issue that you're raising, because I mean, if you move away from what you just said to the digital space, the argument being made there is that there is no assumption about the number of people who read. So if I say on Times Live we have X number of unique browsers, and you as an advertiser, for example, or ABC, or somebody who measures audiences, or somebody who's just generally interested, I am able to be specific about a particular story, about a particular time of the day. I can tell you on Monday at 11 in the morning, there's generally, given the trends that you monitor through Chatbit, etc., there's between this number and the other number of people who are there, who are engaging with the content that is there. And when a story is published, I can tell you at a particular point, these are the many people who are reading it. But as you correctly point out, so the fact that you delivered a newspaper doesn't mean I read it. But even if I pick it up before I get onto Gautrain, for example, you might make an assumption that because it's not where you left it, necessarily I read it and passed it on to my daughter or my wife, who have also read it. But it's possible that I picked it up and have not had the chance to open it and discarded it at some point because there was no longer space for it. But with online, the beauty is that that information is not only there on real time, but I can also go back and say, in the past week, in the past month, and whatever period of interest, this is what has happened.
Right.
And, I think that's the future of not just journalism, but of media in general, of marketing, of advertising, and it's beautiful and exciting.
Yeah, very exciting times. But as you say, the old will have to find its way into wherever it goes, but the new is definitely coming full force. Makuru, we'll leave it there for the time being. We'll join you again a little bit later on in the program to take a look at yours and other newspapers on Sunday. All right, that's Makuru Savaras speaking to us about the paper circulations of the newspapers, and it's quite clear that circulations are down in the print editions, and it's a problem. But online seems to be gaining traction, and I suppose with COVID-19 and people learning to use online because they couldn't leave the house, it may be they'll never go back to print. We'll have more for you after this. Stay with us. Watching Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel. Every week we try and keep you up to date with what's happening with the plight of journalists across the continent. Being a journalist is not an easy job at the best of times, and so it's important for us to share with you some of these stories. And we begin this week in Nigeria, where Pelumi Onifade, a 20-year-old reporter for the Lagos-based Goba TV, was found dead at a mortuary days after his arrest by the Lagos State Task Force on October the 24th, whilst he was on assignment at the Ministry of Agriculture abattoir in Agege area of Lagos. Pelumi and his colleague, who were interning as media personnel, were alleged to have captured the incident and published it across the board. A few days after the shooting, Pelumi was out on official duty again at abattoir Oko Oba area of Agege, where he was later arrested and whisked away by the Lagos State Task Force. Now, this week, Egyptian authorities extended blogger Mohammed Ibrahim's detention. Ibrahim has been held in a pre-trial detention since September the 21st, 2019, when he was arrested and charged with membership of a banned group spreading false news and misusing social media. According to reports, the blogger was due to be released on November the 3rd, but instead additional charges have been filed against him and his detention to be extended pending an investigation into the new charge. And that's pretty disappointing to see what's happening to journalists across the continent. And this Egyptian reporter, as I was saying, taken into custody for just doing his job. And sadly, this is a trend that we're seeing in many countries across the continent dealing with the challenges of reporters. All right, let's catch you up because in about 29 minutes and 45 seconds time, the agenda is going to be on air, and the man in the anchor seat this morning is Blaine Herman. Blaine, how you doing, my brother?
I'm very well indeed, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, we've got a packed program this morning. We've got 4 hours together. We are monitoring something that's happening in KwaZulu-Natal. It's an important day. Today is World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. And I guess it's a day set aside and allows us to remember those that have perished on our roads, as well as the families that have been affected by road crashes, not only here in South Africa, but around the world. So we'll take you to an event in KwaZulu-Natal and find out how they're commemorating this day, and also what sort of road safety plans do they have in place in that province, especially ahead of the festive season. Also, the other story we're following, independent candidates seemingly performed dismally in the recent by-elections. Why is this the case? Well, we'll be exploring that and unpacking that. And what does these results mean for independent candidates leading up to the 2021 elections? Also, we have a packed sports bulletin as well, focusing on MotoGP, Formula One, the Masters as well. All that and more coming up between 10 and 2. Peter?
We certainly look forward to that. Blaine, thanks very much indeed, my brother. Okay, so that's Blaine Herman, and you can join it in the agenda literally in about 28 minutes' time. Packed show as always. All right, we take a quick break, and when we come back, serious concerns about the state of journalism and media's ability to be able to work in eSwatini. Find out why. Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, different levels of media freedom exist on the African continent, from Senegal and its lively newspapers to Eritrea and Djibouti, where there are no privately owned media at all. Now, the Kingdom of eSwatini is no different. There are reports that journalists cannot work freely and are liable to be prosecuted for any criticism of government. According to a newly released article, Swazi journalists are poorly paid, with some senior practitioners earning as little as 7,000 rand a month. eSwatini ranks 141 on the 2020 World Press Freedom Index, and that's from 180 countries. And for more on this, I'm now joined by Vuyisile Hlatshwayo, who is the co-founder of The Nation magazine, a journalist and also voluntary national director of the Media Institute of Southern Africa in eSwatini. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so what is the state of play in terms of journalists being able to do their work? We're seeing a trend that's growing where huge fines are being imposed upon journalists for writing stories.
Well, all I can say is that it is extremely difficult now for journalists to do their work in Swaziland, because the environment is too hostile for them, and it's not just conducive. It's like you are treading, or let me say, you are treading on a minefield.
So what is the issue? I mean, is it anything that's critical of government and the king? But you can write about anything else.
I can say it's not only about the king, it's now about the powerful people who are rich, people who have got money, and people who are influential. Now they do not want the journalists to write stories about them. Whatever the journalist writes, they pick it up and they turn it and they come back to the journalist and say, now look, you have defamed me, and then they go to court. And fortunately for them, whenever they go to court, they know that they are going to win the case. And I think that's the problem right now for journalists in the country, that we have lost confidence in our judiciary, because whenever the complainants take us to court as journalists, we know that obviously they are going to be awarded these huge fines or awards.
Are you suggesting that the stories themselves are true and that the findings by the courts are slanted towards the ones bringing the charges against the journalists?
Look, it depends on the stories.
Yeah.
I would be wrong to say all the stories are true. There are stories that are not maybe up to the standard, because you know that there's ethical journalism. Sometimes you may feel that maybe the journalist hasn't, or live up to the expectations or to the standard. But generally speaking, some stories you find that they are good stories, but just because our judiciary, instead of looking at the merits and demerits, they just look at the status of the person, the complainant. And in most cases, you find that these are influential people. So instead of looking at the merits and demerits of the case, they look at the status of the complainant, and then the media ends up, being a loser.
Are you saying the judiciary has been captured by capital?
Look, it is not for me to say that, because you have to conduct let's say, research on that. But what I'm saying, from our observation and the cases that we have, it looks like the judiciary has got an axe to grind with the media. That's all I can say.
All right. So with these huge fines, especially when one considers what the average journalist is earning, one court case could actually end your career and shut down a paper.
Oh, yes. That's the problem that we're having right now, because, you look at even the pay that the journalists are getting, it's just peanuts, So if you come up with like right now, the Observer is proposing a policy where they are going to fine the journalists for defamatory articles, and they have to pay half of the money that is going to be of the fine. Let me put it that way. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
Do you think one of the consequences of this, and I've seen this in other parts of the continent, where when you're under so much pressure and you see your fellow journalists being arrested, being harassed and detained, you start to see an increase in self-censorship and people, journalists, just too afraid actually to do stories?
That's where we are right now in Swaziland. Journalists are just scared of writing stories. There is a lot of censorship, self-censorship among the media people.
So what does that do for democracy then?
Pardon?
What effect does that have on democracy then, if your journalists are afraid to write what's going on in their countries?
Yeah, it has got a negative impact on democratization of the country, because right now the people are going to be denied of access to information, because the role of the media is to inform and educate and entertain the public. So if the people are no longer getting verified and credible information, they are not going to be able to make informed decisions and choices, so which is going to have a negative impact or effects on the democratization of this country, because now they want the journalists now to be a sort of a propaganda machine.
Over the past 2 years, I've had a number of eSwatini journalists on this program telling me harrowing stories about how they were harassed by the police, how they had to flee eSwatini for periods of time. Is this police harassment still something that's common, or is it, what's the state of affairs?
Well, it is common. Let me say, it is still there. I cannot say it has gone away, but it is still there. But it depends, because, what I can say is that if you want to be a Swazi journalist, you must be courageous enough to stand your ground, and you must try to practice ethical journalism. Don't give them a room. Don't give them ammunition, to use against you. That is very important, I think. So, because the moment you do not you become unethical, then you are giving them a chance. You are playing into their hands. Let me put it that way. Yeah.
You've been a journalist a long time.
So harassment is still common.
You've been a journalist a long time.
Yes.
What would you say has been the trend over time? Things getting better, getting worse, or have they been the same all this time over the years?
Well, let me start with the newsroom. I think we have got a big problem in the newsrooms. There is a lot of generalization of the newsroom in this country. We don't have experienced journalists and who are supposed to mentor the young journalists. And as a result, that's why we are having a lot of problems. Even when you look at the standard of our journalism, it has gone down, drastically. And it's like now we are giving these guys a reason to hammer us, to bash the media, because of our standard of journalism, which is very, very poor because of this generalization of the newsroom. And another thing is that if you look at even our editors, they are no longer doing what they are supposed to do as gatekeepers, because you look at some of the stories that they end up getting into the paper, and you find that those stories are still suspect. They are not up to the standard, and so we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that's the problem when it comes to the standard of journalism in this country. And coming to if you look at the whole media environment in this country, we have a constitution which provides for freedom of expression and media freedom in this country. And we can still use that, take advantage of the constitution, because I'm one person who believes in the constitution that, in fact, in the law, if there is a law, at least you are empowered to challenge the powers that be, that look, we have got a constitution here. What we are doing is contravening the constitution. So at least even the international community at least can listen to you, because there is this document that guarantees you to do something, giving you the rights to do your duty as a journalist. So yes, things are bad, but I think what is happening right now is that government is coming up with a lot of anti-media bills or laws that they are proposing and they want to pass into law. But at the same time, if you look at the media-friendly laws or bills, they seem to take a long time to be tabled in Parliament. To give you a good example, we've got this eSwatini broadcasting bill, which allows for the 3-tier broadcasting system, whereby we are supposed to have a community radio, public service, and the commercial radio stations in this country. But that thing was drafted in 2007. has just reached Parliament, and we are not even sure if the House of the Senators, are going to pass that into law. And even if they pass it, we are not sure if the King is going to assent to that. So when it comes to media-friendly laws, they take time to take them to Parliament. But the anti-media laws, to give you a good example, we've got this cybercrime bill now. It is already in Parliament. It's a 2020 bill. It's already in Parliament. They are busy discussing it. And why? Because it is anti-media. And if you look at the fines, they are exorbitant. They've got hefty fines for journalists there and media people. So that's the problem we are in Swaziland. That is the situation we're in here.
All right, very sad to hear that. Okay, well, let's talk about what you were able to print this week and this weekend. What is in the news in Eswatini at the moment?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have the weekend papers. The Times of Eswatini Sunday today is leading with a story on the loss of 100,000 million. No, it's 100,000 from 29 million that was being repatriated to South Africa. And this amount of money got lost at the central bank. So that's the leading story in the Times of Eswatini Sunday.
How does money get lost?
I understand. According to the story, this money was repatriated to South Africa, and they were using a security, I think it's a security agent, which was transporting it. And then at OR, I don't know what happened. That's where they discovered that there was something strange on the consignment, Then now the central bank directors, or the board of directors of the central bank has instructed, in fact has ordered the governor, Majosi Stole, to investigate this because they suspect that one of the managers there stole this money.
All right, Mr. Flatwire, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. But thank you so much for joining us on the program today. And we certainly wish you and your fellow journalists in Eswatini a change in fortune. And let's hope that you're able to do your work without fearing these massive fines, and that perhaps the democratic space that you create can expand. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Okay. That's Vuyisile Flatwaya, who's the MISA, Media Institute of Southern Africa National Director in Eswatini, speaking to us about the plight of journalists and journalism in Eswatini. And it doesn't paint a great picture, unfortunately. All right. We have more for you on Media Monitor right after this as we take a look at local newspapers. You're still watching Media Monitor, and we come to the last part of the program, and this is where we take a look at those Sunday newspapers. And we're joined once again by the editor of Times Live and deputy editor of the Sunday Times, Makudu Safara. Makudu, thanks very much indeed again for joining us. Let's start with your paper, the Sunday Times. What's on the front page and why?
No, it's an interesting story about the president, our president, Ramaphosa, being enraged at Bushiri's escape, or as the Sunday Independent puts it, great escape. But it's a story that is intriguing because of of what it means for our country, for the security in our state. And what it might mean in diplomatic terms, because there's a claim that the president of Malawi might have assisted in the escape of Bushiri. It's a claim that the Malawian president refutes, but it's a claim that is all over the show. Like if you look at all media houses, yeah.
And I suppose what it does is that this case may be explained eventually, but it does ask questions about Home Affairs officials, particularly at border posts. It's an open secret that money is changing hands. People are going in and out of the country, and that's just the norm.
It's a funny thing because even during Bushire's incarceration, the Department of Home Affairs went to court and said, couldn't explain why he has a diplomatic or half diplomatic passport. And when the minister was asked, he said, you assume that there's no corruption in Home Affairs. And it seems a normalization of the thing, which is problematic. But if you look at recent history, you'll find, people who the police have indicated they want to arrest or they are persons of interest, they don't even, cross a border, that jumping a fence that cost us millions, but that's not a fence. They go to the airport, our main airport at OR, and just walk out. I mean, look at Micho, the former Orlando Pirates coach. The police went to Orlando Pirates, and we have them on record, and they wanted to arrest him for allegations involving something that happened in Rosebank, involving an elderly woman. But after they were asked to come the following day,
we're running out of time. And I do want us to go to your old newspaper, Sunday World, because what happened on Friday seems to be tormenting the ANC.
Yeah, no. The paper is saying that there's people from a number of provinces who are meeting and discussing ways of saving the Secretary General and ways of kicking out current president. The NGC of the ANC was postponed this year to next year, and now they're saying they need to find a way of prioritizing that and making sure that the SG probably moves from the dock to the union buildings as former President Zuma did.
All right. Makuru, that's where we'll leave it. Great talking to you again, my brother. We'll chat again soon. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
That's Sunday Times Live editor and deputy editor of the Sunday Times, taking us very quickly through some of our papers this Sunday. Well, that's it. That's where we come to the end of today's edition of Media Monitor. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Have a great week, everybody. But please be safe. Wash your hands, sanitize them, wear masks, the whole 9 yards. COVID is still real. Take care. Bye-bye.